Hey everybody, it's Mark Pattison back again with another great episode of Finding Your Summit. Today, I've got an amazing guest, a guy I've known for a number of years on and from Mount Everest, but we'll get to that in a minute. First things up, my new website, www.markpattisonnfl.com. On there, I've got my brand new book, Finding Your Summit. Ironically, Kenton, it's got this name of the same as my podcast. It's about the valleys and the peaks and the resilience that you need to have. Kenton, you know a thing or two about that you need to have in the mountains. It talks about my NFL career. It talks about climbing the seven summits, a whole lot of other mountains around that, and just the ups and downs of life and how you get through that. And there's all valuable lessons. I've been doing a lot of keynote speaking. If you want me to come in and light up your organization, let me know. Again, www.markpattisonnfl.com. All right, here we go. Today's guest is Kenton Cool. First of all, Kenton, how you doing?
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, really good. I'm loving your energy this morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what 8:30 for you, and you already lit the room up. Love it. It's
Well,
great.
remember this too. Like you, I've already been out for an hour and a half. I wake up every single morning, and that's just part of my daily routine and my pyramid of success and things that continue. And when by the time I even get to this, I'm like way 3 hours into this. But I'm just like you because I watch your videos when you go out and you do your runs and things like that in London. And you're so keyed up. There's so much energy. This is my caffeine. I don't drink coffee. I've never had a cup of coffee in my life. So.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's kind of like you, especially when you're mountaineering, when you're having to get up at all times during the night, right? I'm just like
Oh
fired up,
God.
ready to go.
Yeah, I love the mountains. I love mountaineering. I do not love those alpine starts. The
Yeah.
1, 2 o'clock in the morning when you're in a French or Swiss mountain hut and everyone's been like burping and farting all night long, and there's a slight anxiety about the day ahead, and you're up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you get given a lump of dry bread from the mountain hut, and that's
Yeah.
it, and then you're
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one part I could live without.
But I mean, we're talking about sort of the same thing is that once you take that first step and that second and the third and that,
Oh, you're
we
awake.
got, you're awake, but when that air comes through your pipes in your mouth and your nose and everything else, it's like a natural caffeine energy
Yeah,
shot, right?
I mean, as well as I do, Mark. You get out there, it may be dark. Yeah, there is anxiety, there's a little bit stress because I work as a mountain guide, so you're
Yeah.
looking after your client. But when that sun breaks the horizon, oh my goodness. I mean, everything changes. And if you're having a bit of a slump, if the energy's not right up there, when that sun breaks the horizon and you see a dawn from a high mountain, the I mean, I got goosebumps just thinking about it. It just
Wow.
brings you alive. You understand what what Mother Earth is all about. Oh, it's just fantastic. It's absolutely epic.
Well, and all the other problems too that are going around the world, especially with what's going on in the U.S. right now, with as it relates to the Middle East and all that kind of stuff. It just like those problems seem to go away because you just see like, why can't the whole world have this kind of peaceful place? But I want to get back to you for a minute because I want to do some bragging on you for a minute. So you and I got to know each other back in 2021 on Mount Everest. You had nestled in a little bit with Garrett Madison. I was
Yeah.
climbing with Madison Mountaineering. I was there to complete my seven summit journey. Since then, I've climbed a lot of other mountains around Europe. But you are a pretty amazing guy because not only have you uh, allowed or made mountaineering the way that you monetize your life in a really cool way, like you were talking about being a mountain guide, but you've now done Mount Everest 20 times. That's just like, I mean, I want to celebrate that. I want to like, that is so amazing. And I'm saying, are you flipping crazy and all these other things? But it's such a remarkable accomplishment. Did you know 20 plus years ago when you kind of had, because we had a conversation on podcast, we'll call it 150 or something. And we were talking about back in your college, days, and you kind of have this kind of, want to go out and do rock climbing, do some other things that you really to get you out there and you caught that bug. But did you ever imagine that you could turn this into the way that you would monetize your life and that you'd actually do Mount Everest 20 times?
No, not at all. And I think this is a real learning point for so many people, and my daughter's going through it a little bit at the moment. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Even in 2004, my first year on Everest, I was given this opportunity to go to Everest as a guide, a leader. I'd never been there before, and I loved it. You know, this opportunity came my way. I grabbed it. I ran with it. Really enjoyed it, and then said to the company I was working for, I'll go back, which is a little bit unusual. There's only about 5 or 6 Western guides that continuously go back to that mountain, because generally, once you've done it, the tick's in the box, you move on. But I really enjoyed it. And it was, I don't know, my second or third year there. We had a very long season. And it was the Ecuadorian guide, although he lives in Colorado now, Luis Benitez. And we were having a coffee in the morning, and we are just talking about Everest. And he's like, how many times are you going to come? And he's like, I don't know, might come here 4 or 5 times. And he said, oh, he was doing about 5 or 6 summits at the time. And he said, oh, I might do 10. Well, I think he did about 7. And here I am on 20.
Yeah.
And it's just continually going. And people always ask, you know, why Everest? Why do you choose Everest? And you probably know a little bit about this. It's a really good mountain in terms of looking after your body. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but if you consider, and I know you've climbed the Matterhorn and you've been on the Eiger and various mountains, those are pretty big days in terms of fatigue in the body, your joints, your knees, your ankles, your hips, your back, your up and down steep, rugged paths. Everest isn't like that. Everest, there's a lot of sitting around. You're predominantly on snow and ice, which is easier on the body. And the injuries that I sustained nearly 30 years ago in a rock climbing accident, Everest is really good for keeping my body mobile. If I just focus on the European Alps, I think I'd be crushed. I don't think I would be able to do what I'm doing right now. And I know you should never say never, and people always find ways to overcome injuries and joint issues. But honestly, you know, having worked 10, 11, 12-week summers in the Alps, Mont Blanc, Matterhorns, Dent Blanche, whatever it may be, Everest is pretty kind on the body, physically at least. And I found a niche. People know me as the Everest guide.
Yeah.
And it's you've been to Nepal. Nepal's a wonderful country. I love the people. I love the culture. I love the food. And I love that mountain. It's fun. And that's what people need to remember. Yes, it's a massive achievement. It's a massive journey. But at the end of the day, these things have got to be fun. And I still love working on that mountain. It's just magnificent.
I think one of the things though that you've made a slight pivot in terms of like the way I did it through Garrett, and I think Garrett has even shifted just a little bit. But you know, because well, let's back up. So first of all, you've created this ecosystem that you basically just guide one person. You're not taking 24 people, right?
Yeah.
And like what Garrett had in his group, and we started with 24 and ended up with 10 that actually, you know, went to from top to the bottom. And in your case, you know, because you're really independent and you don't have all these bodies that you're looking after, you are so much more nimble. So in the case of what happened in 2021 is Garrett's typical rotation is, you know, essentially 3 times up and the third time you're finally going. And for me, I was super strong on rotation two. Rotation two is roughly when I remember when there was a teeny tiny window and you told this guy, we're going to bolt. Actually, I think that year, the guy that you were climbing with actually decided not to go through the whole thing. He wasn't feeling well or something. And so you know, made sure he was safe. Then you came back and you went and did it on your own. But since he resists, you know where you're going, you know what to do. You just went and you went when you went. And your time on mountain is so much shorter, it has been traditionally, than what many of these other guides where you're up there for 2 months and you just get worn down living at 17,500 feet. And so
Yeah.
I just really respect the way that you've been able to be nimble and agile. And so everything you're telling me, I can relate to, except for the fact that I was there for 2 months and it wore me down and it just tore me apart.
Yeah, no, and that was a deliberate shift. I think it was, I don't know, 2011 or 12. Yeah, I went to Everest. We had a really quick time on the mountain. We did it in about 3.5 weeks, door to door. I mean, one of the fastest times to that point. And it really made me reflect about my working practice. And from a business perspective, there's economies of scale. If there's like if Garrett's got 24 clients, the financial return from that is far in excess of what I can charge one to one. I mean, there is
Yeah.
a ceiling to what you can charge on Everest. However, Everest is way more, in my mind, than just a cash cow. It's a really dangerous mountain. And we had a near miss in 2010. A client, she slipped and really hurt her back on the Hilary step. We got her down. It was super stressful, lots of anxiety. She walked away with it with no frostbite, which is amazing, and no long-term issues. But it really made me reflect about safety. And what's the best way to work on this mountain? Because I was not with that particular girl when she fell, because we had, in that time, I think we had 5 or 6 clients on the mountain, and I was with somebody else. And I just went home and thought, it's a really big mountain, even with modern working practices, and it's still really dangerous. What's the best, safest way to work? And I just thought it's got to be one-to-one. It has to be like we work in the European Alps. So I brought that blueprint across, and as almost a byproduct, I kind of found out that if you work to somebody's strengths, if you build up their weaknesses, if you get to know them really well beforehand. So I might spend 2 years working with a client before we go to Everest.
Mm-hmm.
I know them quite intimately. I know what they do when they're tired. I know what they do when they're hungry, and vice versa. We build this trust between us. And generally, Mark, I think people acclimatize quicker than we thought they did. And because you're just working with one person, if they're not feeling particularly good the day that you're going on rotation 2, well, we're going to wait a day. Or you come down from rotation 1 and they're feeling on top of the world and they're like, yeah, we can go again. Well, go again in 48 hours. You don't need to wait a week. And it's no disrespect to Lucas Furkenbach or Garrett Madison or AAI or whoever are running these trips. If you work in a big group, you have to a certain extent, work to the lowest denominator.
Yeah.
If you and I are on the mountain, if it's just
Yeah.
you and me, you're super strong physically, you're super strong mentally. You don't necessarily need to spend 6, 7, 8, 9 days between rotations. You're going to be good to go within probably 48 hours.
Yeah.
Go again. Get it done quickly so you don't grind yourself down. You can take these opportunities. I know for a fact that certainly up to your summit push, you were moving really quickly through the icefall. You were moving quickly on that mountain. Use that skill set to your advantage. And if a small weather window turns up, and I know the client well, I feel confident in taking that weather window, even though it's nipping at the back. So you've got to be up and down efficiently. But if you know the client, you can do that. And it totally transformed the way that I worked on the mountain. And I think, and this perhaps sounds a little bit arrogant, but I think because of the way that I worked in 2011, again in 2012, I think it was, other operators started to look at a faster way of being on the mountain.
Yeah.
Not cutting corners, but just making it more efficient. How can we cut down the time spent at 5,500 meters, where, like you say, the body just gets blasted, it gets ground down, that continuous, you don't recover very well, even with great food and things like that. Your body's struggling to be there at 5,500 meters. If you can streamline that, then I think it just puts you in a great position.
Yeah.
The downside, well, I'm not making the big bucks like some of the other operators are, but for me, it's more than that. For me, it's the enjoyment of being there. It's being safe. It's being efficient, and it's being part of somebody's journey.
Yeah, I a lot of times I talk about being slow and steady wins the race. So not always being the fastest or the first or whatever, because you can't sustain that over time. I mean, you maybe do that on a certain day, but I just know that for me, and I am very efficient going up a mountain. I skin up all the time. I climb these different mountains. I was on one yesterday, and it's just like you got to like pull back a little bit, but also being smart on how you fuel up and when you can go. And so that's one thing I've always been penalized on all these mountains I've climbed um, during the seven summit journey was the lowest, common denominator. You're really catering to the weakest link of the team, and you can only go as fast as the slowest person. And now I've trained my ass off. So I've got all this extra energy that I'm spending just waiting on this guy and being pissed off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus,
And to
versus,
be honest,
yeah,
moving at a slower pace can wear you out just as quickly as moving too fast.
yeah,
Yeah, because you're on your feet for twice as long. And that's not good either. You're in the death zone longer. You might be in a avalanche zone longer. You might be in an icefall collapse zone longer. You know, you got to take those efficiencies I believe, where you can.
yeah. So let's speed up to this year. You celebrated your 20th time on Mount Everest, and you were able to do it successfully again. And this year it was interesting because there was a gigantic Serac, which is a massive ice block. We're like right in the middle of the way through the Khumbu Icefall as you're trying to go from Everest Base Camp up to Camp One. And so you've got this essentially this gigantic, rock, but it's frozen in your way. And the fear is that this thing was going to come down and break, and then people going through there, they'd certainly die. So how did you navigate that?
Well, we're really, really lucky. We've already talked about my work in practice. So we were probably 2 weeks later than most people get into base camp. So we were on the trek when we heard about the
Okay.
Serac
Yeah.
blocking the route and the delay, which actually that delay became 19 days. So the season essentially started 19 days later. So just to give the audience a little bit of context, the icefall doctors will lay the route from base camp up to Camp One. They came across this Serac. They thought it was too unstable. And I wasn't at base camp at this time, so it's difficult to tell. But it does sound like they may, and I've got lots of respect for the icefall doctors, but it sounds like they may have sat on their hands a little bit. They're like, okay, we just got to wait for this to collapse. We were trekking in, myself and the client. We started to hear these rumors, and it sounded quite terminal. People were already talking about, well, this could end the Everest season before it's even
Yeah.
started. There's massive hanging Serac and blah, blah, blah. And it was about a day or 2 days after I got to base camp, Mingma of Imagine Nepal, one of these super Sherpas that has come into the public eye the last, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years. Very proactive Sherpa. He just got bored of the situation. And he goes, right, let's go up there and have a look. And he took a small team of Sherpas up with him. He came back and said, well, I don't think it's as bad as it looks. And I think there's a route round the side. And he went back up, I think, 2 days later with a Polish skier as well. It's a phenomenal Polish
Yeah.
dude
I saw
that
that.
skied down. Oh
Yeah.
my God. I mean, that's incredible. And they found an alternative route. And the amazing thing, Mark, is they found this alternative route, and it wasn't a snub to the icefall doctors. It was like I suppose it was a clean set of eyes on a problem. Because how often do we get just suckered into a problem? We can't see a solution. You get somebody else in and like, well, have you tried this? They found a way around to Camp One, but the season was best part of 3 weeks late. And everybody's just thinking, shit, what's going to happen? It's going to be a super late summit. How is that going to help with the numbers of people on the mountain?
Yeah.
Everybody's been waiting at base camp, getting very anxious. Some people were getting quite angry. And then predominantly three teams came together. It was Elite Expeditions, which is Nims's company,
Yeah.
Imagine Nepal, Mingma, and Seven Summits, which is Tashi, Mingma, and Dower. They came together with the help of Furkenbacher Ventures, who were providing some logistics, some oxygen, and some support with weather forecasting. And they worked so hard. They opened the mountain. They collaborated, which is a little bit unusual. They collaborated and they got that mountain fixed to the summit in record time.
Hmm.
And I think that just goes to show a couple of things. One, why can't we do that every year on the mountain? Because I can't quite remember 21. They kind of merged into one a little bit, Mark. I can't remember when we summited in 21. But generally, you're waiting on the fixing teams to fix the rope to the summit. And certainly in the last few years, that's been quite slow. This year, they showed that it can be done quickly, efficiently, through collaboration and community. And it is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And the first summit this year was 48 hours later than it was last year, despite a 3-week delay. So it didn't actually affect the season long term. It was incredible. Just the coming together of the industry to get it done. One vision, one goal. Let's get behind this and make it happen. And it was beautiful to see.
Yeah, you never know until the time actually comes when the weather window opens up. And that's what, like, a lot of people would understand this. So what you're waiting for is Mother Nature for the jet stream, which is
Yeah.
blowing over 200 miles per hour, to rise to relatively speaking, give you safe passage to get to the
Yeah.
top. It's still a beast to get up there. So I don't want to shortchange that, but I think what everybody thought was going to happen is that you're going to have what happened a number of years ago, where there's these gigantic lines, and I think there were still some lines. It
Uh,
depends
the,
on when you
the,
go, right?
yeah, there was a big line. Yeah, and it's worth talking about that. So I think it was May 20th. So this was about 5 days after the fixing team got to the top. There was a good weather forecast. Lots of people have been sat around. Patience is beginning to wear thin with a lot of teams. Um, but you could see it. We all knew it was going to happen. We knew that on something like the 18th, 19th, 20th, maybe the 21st, there was going to be a huge exodus of people attempting the summit. You could see this 4 or 5 days out. It was obvious. And then on May 20th, there were 274 summits from one side, which is a record.
Yes.
And the pictures that you saw of going up from Camp 3, that you know well, up towards the yellow band, just literally hundreds of climbers, support staff, Sherpa guides, the Sherpas carrying the oxygen cylinders. It was just, it was incredibly sad to see, because nobody wants to be in that queue. Nobody wants to be in a queue on summit day. And in my mind, this year at least, it was eminently avoidable if people had just a little bit more patience. We summited on 22nd, and we had, I think it was 65 summits a day that we summited, which is still quite a lot. But we generally say that, summit there on Everest, if there's up to 100 climbers, including Sherpa support, Sherpa guides, etc., that's okay. That's perfectly manageable. More than about 110, 115, it starts to get problematic. 274, that's nuts. People are going to run out of O's. They're going to get cold. The frostbite is going to be an issue. If the weather turns for whatever reason, that is a recipe for disaster. And it's just sad to see that with all the knowledge, all the technology that we have, and the collaboration that we saw this year, that is still happening.
Yeah. And
It's
there's,
just,
one thing too that I got this yesterday from somebody um who's never climbed Everest, is not really a mountaineer, but it's just like because of all the comforts that a lot of these different outfitters are creating, the tents down at base camp
yeah,
and the kind of food that they're creating, they're still minimizing how difficult, like at the end of the day, even though you've got additional support and help, and maybe a Sherpa is carrying something more than you would normally carry if it was just you going up there, it's still a bear to get from the beginning to end and back down in one piece. And whether you're in a line or you're not in a line, you still have to do that work. It'd be like saying that you're running a marathon race and somebody's giving you a ride in a car or on the back of a bicycle. No, you still have to do the actual work going up that mountain. And it's just like, I'm surprised like actually more people aren't knocked off, because there's a lot of people up there with not enough experience and they shouldn't be there in the first place.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. You go to base camp and you see, it's even changed since 21, Mark. Honestly, the setups these days are incredible. But as soon as you step foot on the mountain, everything becomes equal. Doesn't matter if you VIP with your $15,000 espresso machine in the mess tent, and space heaters in your private tents and your private shower and your private loo, or whatever you might have at base camp. And base camps these days, compared with 2004, we didn't even have a carpet on the floor. We
Yeah.
just had a tent on the
Rock.
glacier, on the
Yeah.
rock. Yeah. it was bloody freezing.
Yeah.
No heater in the mess tent, single skin mess tent, whereas now the triple skin, the big domes, the space heaters, there's espresso machines, etc., etc. But camp one, camp two, camp three, camp four, doesn't matter what logistical outfit you buy in, they're pretty much identical. The support on the hill gets stripped back because you logistically cannot provide really anymore. And you know, you've got to carry your oxygen cylinder regardless. You might only be carrying one cylinder, but you still
Yeah.
got to carry it. It's not like there's a pipe going to a Sherpa in
That's
front of you.
right.
You still got to put one foot in front of the other. You still got to negotiate, the summit ridge and get down the triangular face and get down the fixed ropes. There's still no helicopter rescue really
Yeah.
above camp two. Now I know that you can be long lined out of camp three, but the weather's got to be perfect for that. You got to do it.
Yeah.
You still got to do it. And I think what's happened a little bit is people get seduced by seeing all these pictures of summit photographs of people with their arms up, and it looks wonderful, and pictures of base camp with its luxuries and comforts and the food. Oh my god, the food is so good these days. They just get seduced into Everest is easy, and it's not. Even as a mountain guide, we can facilitate as much as we can, but the individual still has to climb the mountain exactly the same way that they would have had to have done in 1953 on the first ascent.
Yeah.
It hasn't got any easier. It really hasn't.
Crazy. How many more Everest summits do you want to bag? Do you have a goal right now? If I can get to 30,
No,
25?
not no, 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 no. I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, we started this by saying, no, 20 Everest summits. That's records on mountains. I mean, and we got to put this in context. The all-time record is Kami Rita Sherpa. He's on 32
Yeah.
summits, I think.
Yeah.
Then it's Padawa. He's on 31. The guy that I work with a lot, Dorji Gelgin Sherpa, he's on 25.
Yeah.
You know, but then records don't really have a place on mountains. Yeah, the first ascent of a mountain, I think, is important, should be recorded. The first ascent of a route should be recorded. But beyond that, it's pretty arbitrary records, which is one of the reasons why we have fastest known times and things like that. I will keep going to that mountain as long as I enjoy it. If I'm enjoying it, I can give a level of service that the client deserves because I'm as excited as they are. Chances are, most clients are only going to have one time on Everest. It's very unusual for a client to come back for a second summit. It's really unusual. So they've got to have a really great time. And for them to have a great time, everybody around them has to be having a great time. It's like an osmosis, isn't it? If you walk into a workplace and you're in a shitty mood, that will project upon other people. If you walk in full of energy like you did at the start of this call, I'm now buzzed up.
Yeah.
I mean, just because it's even coming through a screen. So I've got to be energized for Everest. And currently, Mark, I love that place. I'm courting a client I've got a client for next year. I'm courting a client for 28. And I've just engaged with a client potentially for 29. We'll see after that.
Yeah.
We see where it goes.
Well, we'll do like podcast 500. Well, we'll get an update on what that's going to be. But you and I still, it's not going to be Everest, but you and I still need to do some climbing because we're too much alike in too many different ways.
Well, you keep coming to Europe and running up and down these mountains, and I only hear about it,
Yeah.
on social media once you've done it. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
Mark's just been up and down the Matterhorn. But I think I missed you on the Matterhorn by
Yeah. That was
like
close.
a week or so.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, that's almost my backyard. I mean, I live in the Cotswolds in the UK. I'm working on the Matterhorn next month. I'm working on the Eiger next month. I love the European Alps. Obviously, I love the big mountains. I love
Yeah.
Denali. I
Yeah.
love Everest. I love, working in Pakistan. Pakistan's such an amazing country. But the European Alps,
Yeah.
it's
Amazing.
such a playground. What a
Switzerland,
playground.
France,
Oh,
yeah, all those places. We only have about 5 more minutes here, so I want to make this quick. But when I did Mount Blanc, it seems like there's a lot of rock that's coming down right now in that
oh
one
my God.
couloir, right? And
Yeah.
it was shut down my first year. I think this was 2022. I gone to do the Matterhorn. That they shut that down. So we retreated back and we were able to climb. But Mont Blanc had been shut down the entire summer. And then they just opened it up, and there would have been a bunch of climbers that get knocked out, and guides, where that it's about a
Hmm.
100-meter crossing that you got to get it, and there's this
Yeah, the
big
Grand Cool.
chute. Yeah, and it's just like one, two, three, run for your life with crampons
Yeah.
on. It's scary.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't work on Mont Blanc anymore, and that's one of the reasons. I mean,
Yeah,
that's not guiding. A guide can't um, mitigate that risk. I mean, that's just objectively dangerous. I mean, two people died there the other day. I mean, the Matterhorn is currently shut. The
yeah,
Swiss guides aren't climbing the Matterhorn at the moment, and we haven't got time to get into it right now. But perhaps we can dive in on another pod. Now, this is climate change. I mean, if you see a picture of the
it's real.
Matterhorn
Yeah,
today, it's totally black.
yeah,
There is no snow and ice on it at all. And Mont Blanc, I wouldn't be surprised if Mont Blanc, if the current heat wave in Europe continues, the mayor of Saint-Tropez, who's ultimately held responsible, I wouldn't be surprised if they're shutting Mont Blanc at
they,
least by that route down again.
yeah. I mean, just too much rockfall. Okay, last question for you, and this is really cool. And this is when you and I actually sit down hand in hand. We're in some bar in London. You and I are going to have some Everest gin. All
Oh
right.
yeah, I got it on here.
Yeah. Tell me
Yeah.
about it. Okay. So tell me about Everest gin. I know that you're like you must have like 80,000 gallons of snow in your backpack coming down. Then you're
Yeah,
putting,
yeah, yeah.
you're mixing. So
Okay, so so
go ahead.
so, so very simply, Everest Gin. I got approached by an individual that makes bespoke spirits, and he basically said, "Listen, it'd be really cool if we collaborate on something." And I said, "Well, yeah, great. What do you fancy doing? Gin's relatively easy to make.
Yeah.
You don't need to lay it down or stuff like that." I brought down about 2 liters of water from the summit. We put a
Yeah.
few drops of summit water into
Yeah.
Everest Gin, and the proceeds. This is the best part. The proceeds go to the Gurkha Welfare Trust. It's handcrafted. We only do small batches using botanicals found in the Himalayas, and the proceeds go to charity. And that's what Everest Gin's all about. And I think it's a great gin. It's heavy on juniper, because juniper is found all over the Everest region, and it's a beautiful thing. Yeah, I'm working with the distiller, and yeah, we're not crushing it, but money's going to the charity, and people are enjoying it. So
Love
yeah,
it.
if you get the chance, Everest Gin, there we go.
Yeah.
Get your bottle of it. Although it's really difficult because of your leadership team, it's really difficult to ship it across to the US.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's why I have to come to you, and then you and I are gonna have a gin and tonic with your Everest gin.
Yeah, yeah,
All right, where can people find you? Because I know you also do a bunch of keynote speaking, and you've had books, and you've got a lot of great
yeah.
stuff.
It's very simple. There's only one guy out there with my stupid name,
Yeah,
Kenton Cool, KentonCool. There's a website. You can find me on social media. It's all simply Kenton Cool.
yeah. And everybody out there, all you need to do is go into your Chat GPT and type in superhero, and that's who you get, Kenton Cool. All right, buddy. Thank you so
Love you,
much.
Mark.
Hey, thank you so much for coming on. You're a great dude. I love talking to you, and continued pursuits. Safety to you and your family. Enjoy the Virgin Islands, and you and I will for sure hook up for another podcast in the future. Okay.
Please. Yeah, let's
All
do
right.
it.
All right. There he is, the one, the only Kenton Cool. Thank you.
Love you, Mark.